The market was loud, filled with the cries of traders and the clatter of metal. Strange lights blinked from signs, and voices of many species mixed into one endless noise. In the center of the crowd, a girl stumbled forward with heavy chains on her wrists and ankles. Her skin was pale under the harsh suns, and her thin arms shook as the guards pushed her onto the auction block. She did not lift her head. She had learned long ago that looking at the crowd only brought more shame. Her hair, long and tangled, fell over her face like a curtain. She hugged herself, though her arms were bound, as if that could protect her from the laughter that rose around her. "Another one," the auctioneer shouted, his voice echoing through the square. "Strong bones, still young and still breathing. Who will start the bidding?" Coins clinked. Voices answered. Some aliens jeered and whistled. Others argued about her worth like she was a piece of meat. The girl shivered, her legs barely holding her weight. She wanted to close her eyes to vanish, but the chains reminded her there was no escape. Then, through the crowd, someone different appeared. A man, a human. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his clothes dusty from travel. His eyes scanned the crowd with calm focus, not with hunger or greed. When his gaze reached the girl, he did not look away. He stopped right in front of the platform, and for a moment, the noise of the market seemed to fade. The girl noticed his stare. Her heart beat faster. Was he just another buyer? Another cruel master? Or something else? The auctioneer grinned when he saw the human pause. "Ah, you traveler. You have sharp eyes. Look at this fine one, yes? Strong spirit, broken but not gone. Good price today, only—" The human raised a hand. "How much?" His voice was steady, but it cut through the laughter around him. The auctioneer blinked, then gave a wide smile full of crooked teeth. "For her? The price is high, very high. Too high for a wanderer like you." He named a number so large that even the crowd gasped. The girl lifted her head in shock. No one would ever pay that much. No one cared that much. The crowd began to laugh again. "He cannot pay," someone shouted. "He will walk away like the rest," but the human did not move. Slowly he reached into his pack. One by one he placed items on the wooden table beside the stage. Credits, coins, weapons, tools, even the worn silver ring on his finger. The crowd fell quiet. Every sound of metal on wood echoed like thunder. He was giving everything. The auctioneer's smile faded. His eyes darted to the guards, then back to the human's face. You are serious?" The human nodded once. "Set her free." The girl's breath caught in her throat. She could not believe it. This man, a stranger, was trading everything he owned. His wealth, his weapons, his safety for her. Her knees went weak and she nearly collapsed. The chains rattled as the guards hesitated. The crowd murmured, angry and confused. Why would a human do this? What trick was this? The auctioneer tried to laugh, but his voice cracked. "You're a fool. She is not worth this. No slave is worth this." The human's eyes burned cold as steel. No one belongs in chains. For a heartbeat, silence spread through the market. Even the guards froze. The girl stared at him wide-eyed, tears welling up. No one had ever said those words before. Finally, the merchant spat to the ground and waved a hand. "Fine, take her. She is yours. May you regret it." The keys turned in the locks. The heavy chains dropped with a final clank. The girl stumbled free, but unsure if she could even stand. Her wrists were raw and bleeding, her body weak from hunger. The human reached out, steadying her with strong hands. His voice softened as he whispered, "You are safe now." She looked up at him, her lips trembling, her mind spinning with questions she could not form. Safe? Could that word truly belong to her? Behind them, the crowd erupted again. Some shouted with anger, others with laughter. Already eyes were turning sharp with greed. A man who spent all his wealth in a slave market, he was now easy prey. The human ignored them. He wrapped part of his cloak around her shoulders, covering her torn clothes, shielding her from the stairs. Then he guided her down from the stage, step by step, like someone leading a wounded traveler home. But deep in the crowd, men were already whispering to each other. The human had humiliated the slavers. He had broken the rules of the market. They would not let him leave so easily. The girl clutched his arm tightly, her voice shaking as she spoke for the first time. Why would you do this?" The human looked at her, his eyes firm but kind. Because no one else would. And as the market roared behind them, the girl realized her life had changed forever. The market did not forget, and the market did not forgive. As the human led the freed girl through the narrow streets, whispers followed them like shadows. Some voices mocked him, others spat curses, but most were quiet, their eyes filled with envy and hate. To them, what he had done was madness. A man who gave away everything for a slave was either a saint or a fool, and both were dangerous. The girl's steps were slow. Her legs trembled, weak from hunger and from years of carrying chains. The cloak around her shoulders felt heavy, but it was the first warmth she had felt in a long time. She clutched it tightly, afraid it might vanish like a dream. Every sound, the hiss of steam vents, the call of vendors, the laughter of drunk soldiers, made her flinch. She was free, but freedom felt unreal. The human walked beside her, silent and steady. He kept his head high, his stride firm, as if he had lost nothing. But she had seen it. He had emptied his pack until there was nothing left. No credits, no weapons, no food. He had even given up his ring. The kind of thing a man only parts with at the end of the road. At last, when the crowd thinned and the shouts grew distant, the girl whispered, "Why? Why give so much? You will have nothing now. Nothing." He looked at her, his eyes calm. "I gave away things," he said, "but things can be earned again. Your life cannot." Her lips parted, but no words came out. No one had ever spoken like that before. Her owners had always seen her as numbers, as a price on a board. But this man had seen her as someone. They turned into a quieter alley. The stone walls rose high, cracked with age. A broken fountain trickled in the center, its water green with moss. The girl sat heavily on the edge, her wrists aching from the wounds where chains had rubbed her raw. The human tore a strip of cloth from his cloak and wrapped her wrists gently. His touch was careful, almost reverent. She winced. "You should not waste time on me," she muttered, her voice trembling. "They will come. They will not let us leave." "I know," he said simply. The fountain's water rippled as a cool breeze drifted through the alley. For a moment it felt like peace, but then the sound of boots broke it. A group of guards marched past the entrance, scanning the streets. Their armor clinked with every step. Their weapons gleamed under the twin suns. The girl froze, holding her breath. The human laid a steady hand on her shoulder. "Do not move," he whispered. The guards passed without turning, their laughter fading into the distance. Only then did she breathe again, her chest rising and falling fast. "See?" he said softly. "For now we are invisible." Her heart was still racing. She looked at him, studying his face. His jaw was strong, his eyes weathered, his skin marked by scars. He was not a rich man, not a noble, not a warrior with banners. He was just a traveler. Yet he had done what kings had never done for her. He had paid the price of freedom. But freedom, she knew, came with danger. The market master would not stay silent. He had lost face, and in places like this, reputation was worth more than gold. Already the slavers would be plotting, whispering in smoke-filled rooms. The human was marked now. So was she. The girl lowered her head, shame filling her chest. "You should have left me there. You have lost everything. You should have walked away." The human shook his head. "If I had walked away, I would have lost something greater." She frowned, confused. "What greater thing?" "Who I am," he answered. The words sank into her like sunlight piercing storm clouds. She did not understand him fully, but she felt their weight. This man was not like the others. He was bound not by chains, but by his own sense of right and wrong. And he had chosen her side. A noise snapped her from her thoughts, a clatter at the far end of the alley. Shadows moved. 3 figures stepped forward, their cloaks dark, their hands on knives. Their eyes gleamed with greed. "Traveler," one of them sneered. "You paid a fortune for that girl. Maybe we'll take her off your hands, and whatever's left of yours." The girl stiffened. Her breath caught in her throat. The human stood, placing himself between her and the strangers. He had no weapons now. Nothing but his body and his will. The men laughed, circling closer. The girl's heart pounded. She had seen men like these before, jackals who hunted the weak. The human could not fight them barehanded. He would die, and yet he did not flinch. "Stay behind me," he told her quietly. The men lunged, the alley filled with the sound of struggle, boots scraping stone, fists striking flesh, grunts of pain. The human fought with the strength of desperation, using every trick, every ounce of will. He ducked, twisted, slammed one man into the wall. Another cut his arm, but he ignored the pain, driving his elbow into the man's jaw. The girl watched, torn between terror and awe. He was outnumbered, unarmed, yet he did not fall. Finally, the last thief fled, clutching his broken nose, cursing into the night. Silence returned, broken only by the human's heavy breathing. He wiped the blood from his arm and turned to her. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, stunned. "Good," he said. Then he smiled faintly, though his face was pale from blood loss. Then the price was worth it. Her chest ached. For the first time in years, she felt something she had forgotten: hope. The alley no longer felt safe. The stench of blood lingered on the stones, and the girl could still hear the last thief's curses echoing in her mind. She knew what that meant. Word would spread. The human had humiliated the market, and the market would answer. He tied another strip of cloth around his wounded arm, pulling it tight until the bleeding slowed. His face was calm, almost too calm, but his eyes were sharp, scanning the streets beyond the alley. "We cannot stay here," he said, his voice steady. "They will come." The girl's throat was dry. "Where can we go?" "Every street belongs to them." The human looked down the broken path ahead. The sun had dipped low, painting the walls red with light. Beyond the roofs, smoke drifted from cooking fires. The city was alive, but alive with enemies. He reached out his hand. "We keep moving, together." Her fingers trembled as she placed her hand in his. Warmth spread through her skin at the contact. For years, chains had pulled her forward, cold and unfeeling. Now a hand guided her, steady, human, and free. They slipped back into the streets. The market noise still roared nearby, though now it carried a different tone, confusion and anger like a hive stirred by fire. The human pulled the girl into the flow of bodies, weaving between merchants and buyers, blending into the crowd. For a moment, it seemed to work. No one looked at them too closely. The smell of spices, roasted meat, and burning oil covered their scent. The girl kept her head low, the cloak hiding her face, but then a shout rose behind them. "There, the human and the girl!" Her heart stopped. Guards shoved through the crowd, their armor flashing in the dying light. The people scattered, some cheering, some pointing, others moving aside. The human did not hesitate. He gripped her hand tighter and pulled her forward. "Run!" The world blurred. Stalls and crates flew past as they sprinted through the narrow street. The girl's lungs burned, her legs weak, but fear gave her strength. Behind them, boots pounded the stones, voices barked orders, blades rang out, "Stop them!" The human darted left, crashing into a fruit stand. Oranges and purple pods scattered across the ground, rolling under the guard's boots. The crowd shouted in anger, but it slowed the chase. He pulled her down another street, narrow and dark, the smell of damp stone rising around them. The girl gasped for breath. "They will catch us." "Not if we vanish first," he said. They reached a stairway that climbed between two tall buildings. The human pushed her ahead, urging her to climb. Her legs shook, but she obeyed, dragging herself upward step by step. He followed close behind, glancing back at the shouts below. At the top, the stairway opened onto a flat roof. The city stretched out in every direction. Stone towers, hanging bridges, smoke rising from thousands of fires. The sun's bled red light across the horizon. The girl staggered to the edge, her chest heaving. Where now? The human's eyes scanned the rooftops, then the alleys far below. Guards swarmed the streets, spreading like ants, blocking exits, herding the crowd. The net was closing. "They are driving us inward," he muttered. "They want us trapped." She swallowed hard. "Then we cannot win." But he shook his head. "We do not need to win. We only need to escape." He led her across the roof, leaping over broken tiles and ducking under clotheslines. She nearly slipped, but he caught her arm, steadying her. They crossed onto another building, then another, moving higher above the streets. Below, torches flickered as the guards spread wider. One of them shouted, pointing upward. "On the roofs!" Arrows whistled through the air. The girl cried out as one struck the tiles near her feet. She stumbled, falling to her knees. The human pulled her up, his grip strong. "Keep moving." They raced across the rooftops, the city spinning beneath them. The girl's vision blurred, but she forced herself forward. The human was relentless, his strength carrying them both. At last they reached the far side of the district. Below, a broken aqueduct stretched like a bridge over the slums. It was cracked and dangerous, but it led away from the guards. The human looked at her. "Can you cross?" Her legs shook. I don't know. "You can," he said firmly. "I'll be with you." He climbed onto the aqueduct first, testing each step. The stones groaned under his weight but held. Then he reached back for her hand. She stepped onto the broken path, the city yawning open beneath her. One wrong move and she would fall into the abyss. But his hand was there, steady, pulling her forward. Step by step they crossed, the sounds of the market fading behind them. When they finally reached the other side, the girl collapsed to her knees, trembling. Tears streaked her face, though she did not notice. The human crouched beside her, his voice soft. "You're safe for now." She looked at him, her lips quivering. "You could have let me go. Saved yourself." He shook his head. "I did not free you to lose you." Her heart clenched, her chest tight with emotions she could not name. For the first time in years, she felt the faintest spark of trust. But even as the night fell and the streets grew quieter, she knew the truth. The market would not stop. The slavers would hunt them, and the price of freedom was still far from paid. The night came heavy and fast. Twin moons rose above the jagged skyline, silver light spilling over rooftops and broken towers. The city quieted, but danger never slept. Somewhere in the darkness, the slavers sharpened blades and whispered plans. The girl knew they would not rest until chains were locked around her wrists again, or until she and the human lay dead. Her body shook as she followed him through twisting alleys. Each step hurt, but she did not complain. The aqueduct crossing had drained the last of her strength, yet his hand pulled her onward, steady and sure. She clung to that hand like it was her last anchor in the storm. At last he stopped before a crumbling archway. Vines and moss covered the stone. Beyond it stretched a shadowed ruin, once a temple, now abandoned and forgotten. Broken pillars leaned like tired giants. The roof had fallen long ago, leaving only shards of walls and a floor littered with dust. "This will do," the human murmured, leading her inside. The girl's knees gave way. She sank against a wall, hugging her cloak around her frail body. The stone was cold, but at least it was shelter. Her breathing came in shivers, each exhale visible in the chill night air. The human searched the ruins, gathering scraps, pieces of broken wood, strips of torn cloth, dry weeds growing in cracks. Soon he sparked a small fire. Its glow pushed the shadows back, painting the walls in warm orange. She stared at the flames, her eyes wide. Fire meant warmth. Fire meant safety. In her years of captivity, warmth had always belonged to others. Masters had sat by fires while slaves froze outside. Now for the first time the fire belonged to her too. The human returned, sitting across from her. He tore another strip of cloth from his cloak and reached for her wrists. "Let me see," she flinched. Old habits ran deep. In her world, when someone reached for her wrists, it meant shackles, pain, or worse. But his touch was gentle, patient. Slowly she let him take her hands. Her skin was raw, the wounds deep from the chains. He cleaned them with water from a cracked jug he'd found in the corner. Then he wrapped them carefully, his fingers moving with the care of someone who had done this many times before. "You'll heal," he said quietly. Her throat tightened. No one had ever cared if she healed. She whispered, almost too soft to hear. "Why do you help me?" He met her eyes. The firelight flickered in his gaze, calm and steady. "Because I can." She wanted to argue, to tell him he was a fool, but the words caught in her chest. For so long she had been invisible, her pain ignored. Now, for reasons she could not understand, this man had chosen to see her. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackle of flames and the distant call of night birds. Finally, she spoke again, her voice trembling. "They took me when I was a child. My family. I never saw them again, sold from one master to another. I tried to run once, but they broke my leg to teach me. Since then, I never tried again." Her eyes filled with tears. She pressed her face into her hands. "I thought I would die in chains." The human listened, his jaw tight. He did not interrupt. When she fell silent, he said, "I lost someone too. Not to chains, but to greed and cruelty. I could not save them, but I could save you." The words struck her like a blade and a balm at once. He did not pity her, he understood her. Their wounds were different, but pain had carved them both. The fire burned lower. Outside, footsteps echoed faintly in the streets. The girl stiffened, her fear returning, but the human only reached for a broken spear leaning against the wall. He tested its weight, then set it beside him. "They'll search," he said, "but not tonight. Tonight you rest." She shook her head. "I cannot sleep. They'll find us. They always do. Then I'll stay awake," he replied simply. His voice carried no boast, only promise. He settled by the fire, his eyes fixed on the shadows. The girl pulled the cloak tighter around her and curled against the wall. Her heart pounded but slowly. The warmth of the flames and the steady rhythm of his presence eased her fear. Her eyes closed, though not willingly. Exhaustion dragged her down, heavier than chains ever had. For the first time in years, she dreamed, not of cages or whips, but of open skies and distant stars. The human stayed awake, just as he said. His gaze swept the ruins, sharp and watchful. He thought of the cost of what he had done, the danger that waited beyond these walls. Yet he felt no regret. The firelight glowed on the girl's sleeping face, and he knew the price had been worth it. A distant howl cut through the night, answered by another closer by. Somewhere in the city, men prepared to hunt. But in the ruins, for this one fragile night, the girl was free, and the human would fight the whole world to keep it that way. The fire burned low by dawn, glowing like a heartbeat in the ruins. The girl stirred awake, the cloak still wrapped around her thin frame. For a moment she thought it was another dream, that she was still in chains, still under the watch of cruel masters. But then she opened her eyes and saw him. The human sat near the fire, his back against a broken pillar. His eyes were sharp, scanning the shadows as if he had not slept all night. His arm was bandaged, his face tired, but his posture was steady. He was a wall between her and the world. "You stayed awake," she whispered. He glanced at her and gave a small nod. "I said I would." Something strange stirred in her chest. A promise kept. How rare that was in her life. She had known only lies, threats, and empty words. But this man spoke little, and every word carried weight. She sat up slowly, wincing as pain flared in her wrists and ankles. The human noticed but did not comment. Instead, he passed her a small bundle he had gathered from the ruins. Dried roots, a cracked jar of grain, and a skin of water. "Eat," he said. Her hands trembled as she took it. The food was meager, tasteless, but to her it was a feast. She ate in silence, feeling his eyes on her. When she was finished, she lowered her head. "You want to know who I am?" she murmured. He did not deny it. He only waited. The girl drew a shaky breath. "I was born in a village beyond the salt flats. My people were poor but proud. We lived by hunting sand serpents and trading their skins. I had a family, mother, father, younger brother. One night raiders came. They burned everything. Took those who could walk, killed those who resisted. I was 12 when they dragged me away." Her voice broke, but she forced herself to go on. "They sold me at the slave markets, passed from one hand to another. I learned to cook, to clean, to serve. I learned to keep my head down. If I looked up, the whip came. Once I tried to run." She pulled her cloak aside, revealing a faint scar on her leg. "They broke me for that. Afterward, I stopped trying." Her words fell like stones into the silence. The human's jaw clenched, his hand curling into a fist. He did not speak, but his anger was clear. Not at her, but at the cruelty she had endured. The girl hugged herself. "I forgot what it felt like to hope. Every day was just waiting for orders, for pain, for the end. When you stepped into the market yesterday, I thought you were just another buyer. But then, you paid everything. For me." Her eyes lifted to his, wide and trembling. "Why?" The human leaned forward, his voice low but steady. "Because I know what it means to lose someone to cruelty." Her brow furrowed. "You lost someone?" He nodded slowly. "Not to chains, but to greed. My wife was taken by men who wanted power, who cared nothing for life. I tried to save her, but I was too late. Since then I've wandered, carrying the weight of her absence. I could not save her, but when I saw you..." His voice tightened. "I could not walk away." The girl's breath caught. For a long moment neither spoke. Their pain was different, yet it connected them like two broken pieces that somehow fit together. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know how to be free." The human's gaze softened. "You'll learn. Freedom is not given in one moment, it's built every day, and I'll stand with you until you find it." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were not only of sorrow. Something else bloomed inside her, a fragile warmth she had thought long dead. The ruins echoed with a sudden noise. The girl stiffened, her body trembling, but the human was already on his feet, spear in hand. Shadows moved near the archway. Two slavers crept inside, their blades glinting. "There you are," one hissed. "The fool who ruined the market. Hand her over, and maybe we'll let you crawl away." The girl's heart pounded. She pressed back against the wall, fear clawing at her chest. The human stepped forward, planting himself between her and the intruders. His voice was cold as steel. "You'll not touch her. The slavers sneered. You gave all you had for her. Now you have nothing. You'll die for nothing too, they lunged. The fight was brutal. The human spear struck fast, driving one back. The other slashed his shoulder, but he twisted, slamming his fist into the man's jaw. The clash rang through the ruins, steel against stone, grunts of pain, the crack of bone. The girl wanted to scream, to hide, but something inside her shifted. She picked up a broken shard of pottery from the floor. When one slaver stumbled near her, she struck with trembling hands. The shard cut deep into his arm, and he howled in pain. The human finished the fight, driving the last attacker to the ground. The ruins fell silent again, broken only by their ragged breathing. The girl stared at the shard in her hand, her body shaking. I fought back. The human looked at her, blood on his face but pride in his eyes.
Yes, you did. For the first time in years, she felt something stronger than fear.
She felt herself. Not a slave, not a possession, a person who could choose. The human dropped the spear and sat beside her. Your past is filled with chains, but your future is not. The girl looked at him, her voice barely a whisper. Then let's build it. Together. The ruins could no longer hide them. Dawn had broken, and the first light of the suns painted the cracked stones in shades of gold. But with the light came hunters. The slavers had not forgotten their loss, and the market master would not forgive the insult. The human and the girl were now prey, and the hunt had reached its end. The girl sat by the dying fire, her cloak pulled tight around her. Her wrists ached, but it was the fear in her chest that weighed more. She could hear movement beyond the ruins, whispers, the crunch of boots, the sharp ring of steel. She knew this sound well. She had heard it before when raiders came for her village. It was the sound of men ready to kill. The human stood near the archway, spear in hand. His bandaged arm bled anew, but his stance was strong. He did not flinch at the approaching danger. His eyes scanned the shadows, waiting, ready. They're here. The girl whispered, her voice trembling. I know, he said simply. She rose to her feet, her legs unsteady. We should run, he shook his head. There is no running now. They've closed the streets. They want us cornered, her heart pounded. Then what will we do? He turned to her, his gaze firm but calm. We fight, and we do not break. The words struck her heavy and impossible. She had never fought. She had only survived. But something inside her remembered the shard of pottery in her hand. The moment she had stood up to a slaver. The memory burned like fire in her chest. She swallowed hard. Then I'll fight too. The human's lips curved into a faint smile. Good. The silence shattered as the slavers stormed the ruins. 6 of them, armored in scraps of metal, blades gleaming in the rising light. Behind them stood the market master, his jeweled cloak swaying, his face twisted in rage. You dare humiliate me? The master roared. You dare steal from my market? That girl is mine. The girl flinched, her body instinctively recoiling. For years, those words had been her reality, mine. But then she felt the human step closer, his presence a shield. She belongs to no one, the human said coldly. Not anymore. The master's eyes narrowed. Kill him. Bring me the girl alive, the slavers surged forward. The human met them head on. His spear whirled in his hand, striking fast and hard. The first man fell with a cry as the spear slammed into his chest. Another swung a blade, but the human twisted aside, driving the spear's shaft into the attacker's jaw. The girl stood frozen for a heartbeat, fear choking her. But when a slaver broke past the human, charging toward her with chains in hand, something inside her snapped. She grabbed a broken beam from the floor and swung with all her strength. The wood cracked against the man's skull, sending him crashing to the ground. Her chest heaved. She had struck back again. The human fought like a storm, but the slavers pressed hard. One blade cut across his ribs, another grazed his leg. Blood stained his clothes, yet he did not falter. He moved with the desperation of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to protect. Stay behind me, he shouted, blocking another strike. But the girl did not stay behind. She grabbed stones, shards, anything her hands could find, and hurled them at the attackers. Fear and fury burned in her veins, driving her to act. She was no longer only a victim, she was his ally. The fight raged, echoing through the ruins like thunder. The human struck down another slaver, but his body staggered with exhaustion. The market master sneered, stepping forward with a curved blade of his own. You think you can win, human? You gave away your wealth, your strength, your life. For her? He laughed cruelly. You will die here, and she will crawl back to chains where she belongs. The girl's blood ran cold. Chains. That word had always bound her. But not now. Not with him. She stepped forward, her voice rising clear and strong. No, I will never go back. The master froze, his sneer faltering. The girl's eyes blazed, her voice trembling with both fear and defiance. I am not yours. I am not anyone's. I am free. The human's chest swelled with pride. With a final surge of strength, he thrust his spear at the master. The blade clashed against the curved sword, sparks flying. They struggled, steel grinding against steel, until the human forced the weapon aside and drove the spear into the ground beside the master's feet. The master stumbled back, eyes wide with fear. Around them, his men lay broken or fled, their courage shattered. The ruin echoed only with heavy breathing and the crackle of fire. The human stood tall, bloodied but unbroken. His voice rang clear. If you or your kind ever come for her again, you will find me waiting. The master's face twisted with rage, but fear outweighed fury. He spat on the ground and fled into the shadows, his cloak vanishing into the streets. Silence returned. The girl dropped the beam from her hands, her body shaking. She looked at the human, bloodied, scarred, but alive, and tears filled her eyes. She stumbled toward him, her hands trembling as she touched his arm. You stood for me, she whispered. Against all of them. You stood. He met her gaze, his voice soft despite his wounds. I told you. You are free. Her knees gave out and she sank against him, her tears falling onto his chest. For the first time in years, they were not tears of despair. They were tears of release. The ruins were quiet, but something new lived in the silence. A bond forged in fire, stronger than chains, stronger than fear. The girl had chosen to fight. The human had chosen to stay. Together they had faced the storm, and together they had won. The ruins smelled of smoke and iron. Blood stained the stones, dark patches where slavers had fallen. The girl sat close to the fire, her hands shaking though the fight was over. Dawn broke slowly, painting the broken temple in gold. It should have felt like any other morning, yet everything was different. For the first time in her memory, she was free. No chains bit her wrists. No master's voice ordered her steps. No whip cracked over her back. The silence was strange, heavy, almost frightening. The human stood at the archway, his spear leaning against the wall. His clothes were torn, his wounds still bleeding. He watched the empty streets beyond, calm but alert. Even after victory, he did not lower his guard. The girl rose weakly and walked to him. Her bare feet scraped against stone, her knees trembling, but she forced herself forward. She stopped beside him, the rising sun warm on her face. They'll come again, she whispered. He nodded. Yes, but not today. Her eyes searched his face. He was tired, scarred, and burdened with wounds that would take weeks to heal. Yet he stood tall, unshaken. He had paid everything for her freedom and had nearly paid with his life. Why do you not leave me? She asked softly. You could have walked away after the market. No one would have blamed you. He turned to her, his gaze steady. Because walking away would have meant losing myself. I told you before I could not save the one I loved. But I can save you. That is enough, her chest tightened. She lowered her head, tears stinging her eyes. You saved me. But what am I now? I don't know how to live free. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Then we will learn together. The words warmed her more than the fire ever could. She leaned into his touch, her tears falling silently. For years she had been taught she was nothing more than property. Now, for the first time, she was treated as a person. Behind them, the last flames of the fire flickered out, leaving only smoke. The ruins, once filled with fear and blood, now felt like the beginning of something new. The human packed what little they had, scraps of food, strips of cloth, and the broken spear. It was not much, but it was enough to start. When he was finished, he turned to her. Are you ready? He asked. She hesitated. Her body ached, her heart trembled, but she nodded. Yes, together they left the ruins. The city stirred awake as they stepped into the streets. Merchants raised their stalls, guards marched in formation. Children carried baskets of bread. No one noticed the girl walking free beside the human, wrapped in his cloak, but whispers followed them. Some recognized her face, others muttered about the human who had defied the market. Yet no one stepped forward. Fear of the fight he had won still lingered in their eyes. They crossed a bridge over the river, its water glowing orange under the rising suns. The girl stopped halfway, staring at her reflection. She saw her thin frame, her tired eyes, the scars on her skin. For a moment, shame filled her again. Then the human stepped beside her. His reflection appeared next to hers, tall and unbroken. Their images stood together in the water, side by side. She realized she was no longer alone. She whispered, "I don't even know your name." He smiled faintly. "I'm Daniel." Her lips parted. The name felt solid, like a stone she could hold. "Daniel," she repeated softly. He looked at her. "And yours?" Her voice trembled. "Lyra." Daniel nodded once, as if sealing a vow. "Then, Lyra, today is your first day free. Where we go next is up to you." Her heart stumbled. "Up to me?" No one had ever asked her what she wanted. No one had given her a choice. She looked at him, her voice small but growing stronger. "Then I want to go where chains cannot find me, where no one calls me theirs." Daniel's eyes softened. "Then that is where we'll go." They walked on, step by step, leaving the city behind. The road stretched open before them, wide and endless. The desert wind carried the scent of salt and sand, but also something else, possibility. As the city walls faded in the distance, Lyra slowed. She turned once to look back. The market still stood, the same place where her chains had rattled, where men had shouted her price, but now she was walking away from it. She raised her head higher, her shoulders straighter. Daniel noticed, and a faint smile touched his lips. He had seen many broken souls in his life, but here was one choosing to rise. The suns climbed higher, casting long shadows on the road ahead. Lyra walked beside Daniel, no longer pulled, no longer dragged, but choosing each step herself. The new dawn belonged to her, and with Daniel at her side, she believed, truly believed, that no chain would ever bind her again.